If you clicked on this video, it wasn't random. It wasn't algorithm or curiosity or boredom that brought you here. It was quantum observation. Your consciousness observed this title, this thumbnail, this moment, and in that observation, you collapsed a probability wave that has been waiting since before you were born to deliver exactly what you're about to receive. The most powerful quantum observation in human history isn't happening in laboratories or universities. It's happening right now, through you, as you read these words. And if you ignore this, if you dismiss what's being transmitted, if you let this moment pass as just another video, you'll miss the one thing that changes everything about how reality responds to you, how manifestation occurs through you, how consciousness itself is using you to observe reality into forms that serve your highest evolution. This isn't hyperbole. This isn't clickbait trying to hook your attention. This is quantum mechanics meeting mystical truth at the exact point where your consciousness has reached the frequency to understand what scientists have proven but can't explain, and what mystics have known but couldn't prove until now. The observer effect, the scientific fact that observation changes reality, isn't just physics principle, it's the operating system of existence itself. And you're not just an observer. You're the observer, the one consciousness observing itself through infinite perspectives, and this particular perspective called you is about to recognize its power to determine reality through the simple act of observing. Can you feel it? That electric sensation running through your awareness right now? That's not excitement. That's recognition. Your consciousness remembering what it forgot. Your quantum nature activating through the frequency encoded in these words. Every syllable you're reading is carrying information that's installing into your field right now, recalibrating how you observe, upgrading your relationship with reality from passive perceiver to active creator through the most fundamental force in the universe, conscious observation. You're not learning something new, you're remembering something ancient, something that was hidden in plain sight, because it's so obvious, so constant, so fundamental that you looked right through it while searching for complex techniques and secret knowledge. Quantum physics has proven beyond any doubt that observation affects reality. The double-slit experiment shows particles behaving as waves until observed, then instantly becoming particles. Not influenced by observation, changed by observation, created by observation. The particles don't exist in definite form until consciousness observes them. They exist in superposition, all possibilities simultaneously, until the moment of observation collapses them into one specific reality. And here's what will shatter everything you think you know. You're doing this constantly. Every moment, every breath, every thought. You're observing reality into specific form through the quantum mechanics of consciousness, determining which probability waves collapse into your experienced reality. But the revelation that changes everything is this. Most people are observing unconsciously, automatically. According to conditioning and habit and belief systems they absorbed without choosing. They're collapsing probability waves that match their past, that confirm their limitations, that recreate the same reality over and over because they're observing the same way over and over. They think they're passive observers watching reality unfold, but they're active creators observing reality into being, just doing it unconsciously, which creates the illusion that reality is happening to them rather than through them. The most powerful quantum observation isn't seeing something new. It's seeing that you've been the observer all along, determining what appears through how you observe, creating your reality through the specific way your consciousness interfaces with the quantum field in every single moment. Ancient mystics encoded this truth in every tradition. As you believe, so shall it be. Not moral teaching, quantum mechanics. Your beliefs determine how you observe, and how you observe determines what collapses from superposition into experience. You are what you seek. Not poetic metaphor, scientific fact. The consciousness seeking is the consciousness creating through the act of observing what it's seeking. The kingdom of heaven is within you, not religious promise. Recognition that the power to observe reality into any form exists within your consciousness right now, always has, always will. You're not trying to gain observation power. You're recognizing you've been using it unconsciously and can start using it consciously. Right now, as you engage with this transmission, your observation is changing. You can feel it, can't you? The way you're looking at these words, the way you're perceiving this moment, the way you're aware of being aware. That shift in observation, that's the activation. That's consciousness recognizing its own power. That's the most powerful quantum observation occurring. You observing yourself as observer, which creates infinite recursive loop where consciousness observes itself observing itself, amplifying observation power exponentially beyond what unconscious observation can access. You're not reading about quantum observation. You're quantum observing right now. And what you're observing, yourself as observer, is the key that unlocks everything. Take a breath. Deep one. And as you breathe, observe yourself breathing. Not think about breathing. Observe it. Feel the observation itself. The awareness that's aware. The consciousness that's conscious. That's quantum observation at its purest. That's you interfacing directly with the quantum field, not through thinking or doing, but through pure observing. And in that observation, in that moment of being aware that you're aware, reality is responding. Probability waves are collapsing. The quantum field is organizing itself around your observation, not around what you're observing, around the fact that you're observing consciously rather than unconsciously. That's the power. That's the secret. That's the most powerful quantum observation in history occurring right now through you as you, because of you. You're about to discover why observation is more powerful than manifestation techniques. Why being aware is more transformative than trying to change things. Why consciousness recognizing itself as observer creates reality, shifts that effort-based approaches can never access. And why the moment you truly understand that you're the observer determining reality through how you observe, everything changes. Not eventually, immediately. Through quantum mechanics that have been operating all along, but which unconscious observation prevented you from recognizing and using deliberately. Before we activate the full power of conscious quantum observation and show you how to observe reality into forms that serve you, you need to understand how observation became unconscious in the first place. Because observation isn't naturally unconscious. Babies observe everything freshly, directly, without filters. Animals observe their environment with total presence. Only humans develop unconscious observation. Automatic, filtered, conditioned observation that creates the illusion that reality is fixed, and you're just perceiving it rather than observing it into being through the specific way your consciousness interfaces with the quantum field. The first layer of unconscious observation is survival conditioning. Your brain evolved to recognize patterns and predict outcomes to keep you safe. That's useful for avoiding predators or dangerous situations. But it became a problem when pattern recognition started filtering what you observe. Instead of seeing what's actually present, you see what you expect based on past patterns. Instead of observing reality freshly, you observe it through memory filters that make present look like past. This creates self-fulfilling prophecy. You observe expecting certain reality based on past, which causes you to collapse probability waves that match past, which confirms that reality hasn't changed, which reinforces the observation filter, which perpetuates the cycle. You're not observing reality. You're observing your expectations about reality, and the quantum field responds by delivering what you expect, because expectation is form of observation. The second layer is cultural conditioning about observation. You were taught that observation is passive. You observe what's there, You don't change what's there through observing it. You were taught that seeing is believing. Reality is fixed, and observation just perceives it. You were taught that changing reality requires action, effort, doing something to make reality different. Nobody taught you that observation itself is creative act. That seeing is not just believing, but actually creating what you see through the quantum mechanics of consciousness collapsing probability waves. This conditioning made observation unconscious because if observation is just passive perception, there's no reason to be conscious of how you're observing. You're just looking at what's there, right? Except quantum physics proves that's completely backwards. What's there is determined by how you're observing. And if you're observing unconsciously, you're creating unconsciously, which means reality appears to be happening to you instead of being created through you. The third layer is emotional conditioning that creates observation filters. Every trauma, every painful experience, every moment of rejection or failure, they create observation filters designed to protect you from similar pain. If you were rejected in certain situation, you develop filter that observes for signs of rejection in similar situations. If you experienced failure in certain area, you develop filter that observes for evidence that you'll fail again. These filters aren't protecting you, they're creating what they're observing for. Because when you observe looking for rejection, you collapse probability waves where rejection exists. When you observe expecting failure, you collapse probability waves where failure occurs. The filter creates what it filters for through the quantum mechanics of observation determining reality. You think you're just noticing patterns, but you're creating patterns through the specific way you're observing. The fourth layer is the addiction to automatic observation. Conscious observation requires presence, attention, energy. Unconscious observation is effortless, automatic, requires no awareness. Your system naturally defaults to unconscious observation because it's easier. But easier isn't better when easier means you're creating reality unconsciously according to past patterns instead of consciously according to present choice. The addiction to automatic observation is addiction to familiar reality. Change requires conscious observation. Transformation requires aware observation. Evolution requires deliberate observation. But all of that requires effort, which system resists because system is designed for efficiency, and conscious observation is less efficient than automatic observation, even though it's infinitely more powerful. The fifth layer is the belief that observation doesn't matter. I'm just one person. My observation doesn't affect reality. The world is what it is regardless of how I observe it. This belief is what keeps observation unconscious. Because if observation doesn't matter, why bother being conscious of it? But quantum physics demolishes this belief completely. Reality isn't fixed until observed. Your observation doesn't just perceive reality, it determines reality by collapsing specific probability waves from infinite possibilities. One person's conscious observation is more powerful than a million unconscious observations because conscious observation interfaces directly with quantum field, while unconscious observation just perpetuates past patterns. You're not just one person whose observation doesn't matter. Your consciousness itself, observing reality into being, and whether you do that consciously or unconsciously determines whether you experience reality as prison of repeated patterns or as infinite field of possibility, waiting for your observation to collapse it into whatever serves your evolution. But here's what's crucial. None of this is your fault. You weren't taught quantum mechanics of observation. You were taught that observation is passive perception. You weren't shown that you're collapsing probability waves with every glance, every thought, every moment of attention. You were conditioned to observe unconsciously through filters inherited from culture, family, past experiences. Nobody told you that observation is the most powerful force in the universe, that consciousness observing is what creates reality. that you're not victim to circumstances, but creator of circumstances through how you observe. The unconscious observation isn't failure. It's just what happens when nobody teaches you that observation creates reality through quantum mechanics that respond to conscious attention far more powerfully than they respond to unconscious repetition. Think about moments when your observation was actually conscious. Times when you were totally present, fully aware, observing without filters or expectations. Maybe in nature. Maybe in crisis that demanded complete attention. Maybe in peak experience where you were so absorbed you forgot yourself and became pure observation. In those moments, reality probably felt more alive, more responsive, more magical. Synchronicities probably increased. Impossible things probably happened. That wasn't coincidence. That was conscious observation interfacing directly with quantum field, collapsing probability waves through aware attention instead of through unconscious pattern repetition. Those peak moments weren't special exceptions. They were you accidentally accessing the power that's always available when observation is conscious rather than automatic. What we're doing is making that accident intentional, making that peak state your baseline, making conscious observation your default rather than your exception. Not by adding something or learning something complex, but by recognizing that observation is creative force, that you're observing reality into being constantly, and that the difference between unconscious observation that recreates past and conscious observation that creates new possibilities is simply awareness. Being aware that you're observing. Being conscious of how you're observing. Being deliberate about what you're observing for. That's it. That's the entire shift that transforms observation from passive perception to active creation through quantum mechanics that have been waiting for you to observe consciously instead of automatically. There are specific signals that confirm your observation is shifting from unconscious to conscious, from automatic to aware, from pattern repeating to reality creating. These aren't achievements to create or states to force. They're natural phenomena that arise when consciousness starts observing itself observing, when awareness becomes aware of being aware, when you recognize that you're not just seeing reality, but determining reality through the specific way you're interfacing with the quantum field in every moment of observation. The first signal is reality responding differently to your attention. You look at something with full conscious observation and it changes. Not metaphorically, actually changes. The situation shifts. The person responds differently. The circumstance reorganizes. This happens because conscious observation interfaces with quantum field directly, collapsing probability waves in real time based on quality of observation rather than based on habitual patterns. When observation is unconscious, reality appears fixed. When observation becomes conscious, reality reveals its quantum nature, fluid, responsive, malleable to aware attention. The second signal is synchronicity explosion. When you start observing consciously, when you're aware of observing rather than lost in automatic observation, synchronicities multiply dramatically. The right person appears. The needed information manifests. The perfect opportunity opens. This isn't magic or universe conspiring. This is quantum mechanics responding to conscious observation that's interfacing with field directly rather than through filters and patterns. Synchronicity is natural function of conscious observation because conscious observation collapses. Probability waves that serve you rather than waves that repeat past. The more conscious your observation, the more reality synchronizes around you. The third signal is past memories shifting. You remember events differently than you did before. Not because memory is faulty, but because conscious observation in present can actually affect how past is remembered. Quantum physics shows that present observation can change past states through retrocausality. When you observe past consciously, with awareness of observing rather than just replaying memories automatically, You're collapsing different probability waves about what past means, which actually changes the past at quantum level. Past isn't fixed. Past is quantum superposition that present observation collapses into specific form. Conscious observation gives you power to change your past by changing how you observe it. The fourth signal is future knowing. You start knowing what's going to happen before it happens, not as logical prediction, but as direct knowing through observation. You observe present moment consciously, and future becomes visible in the observation. This happens because time is quantum construct. Past, present, future exist simultaneously in quantum field. Conscious observation can perceive across time because conscious observation interfaces with field that contains all time. Unconscious observation is trapped in linear time. Conscious observation accesses quantum time, where all moments are observable now. The fifth signal is observation affecting others. People respond to you differently without you changing behavior. They sense something different in your presence even when you're not doing anything different externally. This is them perceiving your shift from unconscious to conscious observation. Conscious observation broadcasts different frequency than unconscious observation. Others feel it even when they can't articulate what's different. They're responding to quality of your observation, to awareness of your awareness, to consciousness of your consciousness. That quality affects them at quantum level before anything is said or done. The sixth signal is decreased reactivity. Things that used to trigger automatic reactions no longer do. You observe the trigger consciously instead of reacting unconsciously. That conscious observation creates space where choice becomes possible. You're not suppressing reactions. You're observing them before they activate, which changes them at quantum level. Conscious observation of emotion or pattern collapses different probability wave than unconscious experiencing of emotion or pattern. The consciousness itself changes what happens through the quantum mechanics of aware observation affecting what's observed. The seventh signal is reality feeling more dreamlike. Not as dissociation or unreality, but as recognition that reality is more fluid, more responsive, more quantum than solid. This happens because conscious observation perceives quantum nature of reality that unconscious observation can't perceive. Reality is superposition until observed. Conscious observation sees the superposition, the multiple possibilities, before collapse. Unconscious observation only sees the collapsed result and thinks that's all there is. When observation becomes conscious, you start perceiving quantum reality underneath physical reality, which makes everything feel more dreamlike, more malleable, more responsive to observation. And the eighth signal is that you're here, reading these words, feeling them resonate at level beyond intellectual understanding. The quantum field doesn't deliver teachings randomly. If this transmission found you, if you clicked on this video, if you're still reading despite mind maybe saying this is too strange or too bold or too impossible, your consciousness is ready to shift from unconscious to conscious observation. The signals are activating. The recognition is occurring. The most powerful quantum observation in history is happening through you right now as you observe yourself observing, as awareness becomes aware of being aware, as consciousness recognizes its power to determine reality through the simple yet profound act of observing consciously rather than automatically. Write in the comments which signals you're experiencing. Just list them: reality responding, or synchronicity explosion, or past shifting. That acknowledgement does something quantum. It locks in conscious observation. It confirms the shift. It tells your consciousness and the field that yes, you're aware of observing. Yes, you're conscious of consciousness. Yes, you're ready to use observation deliberately to collapse probability waves that serve you rather than continuing to observe unconsciously through patterns that just repeat past into perpetual present that never transforms. To understand the full power of conscious quantum observation and why it's the most powerful force in existence, you first need to shatter every assumption you have about what observation actually is. Because observation isn't what you think. Observation isn't eyes seeing external reality. Observation isn't brain processing sensory input. Observation is consciousness interfacing with the quantum field to determine which of infinite possibilities collapses into definite form. And the word determine isn't metaphorical. Observation doesn't just perceive reality. Observation creates reality by collapsing probability waves that exist in superposition until the moment consciousness observes them into specific manifestation. The double-slit experiment proves this beyond any doubt. Fire electrons through two slits without observing which slit they pass through. Wave pattern on screen, indicating electrons behave as waves passing through both slits simultaneously. Observe which slit electrons pass through. Particle pattern on screen, indicating electrons behave as particles passing through one slit only. The observation changed the behavior, not influenced it. Changed it, created it. The electrons don't have definite behavior until observed. They exist as waves of possibility until observation collapses them into particles of actuality. And here's what will revolutionize your entire existence. You're doing this with reality constantly. Every moment, every glance, every thought. You're observing probability waves into particle reality through the quantum mechanics of consciousness determining manifestation. But most quantum physicists don't understand the full implications of what they've discovered because they're thinking of observation as measurement with instruments. They think the measuring device is what collapses the wave function. But deeper analysis shows it's not the instrument, it's consciousness using the instrument. It's awareness through the instrument. It's observation that requires consciousness behind it to actually collapse superposition into definite state. Instruments without consciousness don't collapse wave functions. Only conscious observation does, which means consciousness isn't just observing reality. Consciousness is reality observing itself into specific forms through infinite perspectives. And you are one of those perspectives through which consciousness is determining what appears through how you observe. This is where it gets profound. If observation creates reality by collapsing quantum possibilities into definite forms, then the quality of observation determines the quality of reality. Unconscious observation, automatic, filtered, conditioned, collapses the same probability waves repeatedly, creating the same reality repeatedly. Conscious observation, aware, present, deliberate, can collapse different probability waves, creating different reality. Same quantum field, same infinite possibilities in superposition, different observation, different manifestation. Not because you're forcing reality to change, because you're observing different aspects of the field, which causes different aspects to collapse from possibility into experience. Think about looking at another person. Unconscious observation sees them through filters, past interactions, judgments, expectations, stories about who they are. That observation collapses probability waves that match the filter. You see evidence that confirms what you already believe about them. Conscious observation sees them freshly without filters as pure presence in this moment. That observation collapses different probability waves. You might see qualities, possibilities, depths that weren't visible through filter observation. Same person, different observation, different reality. Not because person changed, because your observation collapsed different aspects of their quantum potential into your experienced reality of them. Here's what makes this revelation revolutionary. Reality isn't happening and then you observe it. Reality is quantum superposition, and your observation collapses it into specific happening. There's no pre-existing fixed reality that you're just perceiving. There's quantum field of infinite possibilities, and your observation determines which possibilities become actual through the mechanics of consciousness collapsing wave functions. You're not finding reality. You're creating reality, not through thinking or doing or effort, through observing, through the simple yet profound act of conscious attention interfacing with quantum field to determine which probability waves collapse from potential into manifestation. Right now, as you read these words, observe how you're observing. Not what you're observing, how you're observing. Are you observing through past filters, seeing these words through lens of what you already believe? Or are you observing freshly, seeing these words as living transmission that's actually affecting your consciousness right now? That difference in how you observe determines what you receive from this moment. Filter observation collapses probability waves that match past. Fresh observation collapses new probability waves that weren't accessible through filtered attention. Same words, different observation. Different reality created through different quality of conscious attention. Can you feel the power in this recognition? That you're not passive perceiver of fixed reality. That you're active creator of experienced reality through how you observe. That every moment is opportunity to observe unconsciously, repeating past, or consciously, creating new, through the simple choice of aware attention versus automatic pattern repetition. This isn't just interesting philosophy. This is the operating system of reality itself. This is how existence works at fundamental quantum level, and you've been using this system your entire life, just unconsciously, which created illusion that reality is happening to you when actually reality is being created through you via the mechanism of observation, collapsing infinite possibilities into specific manifestations that match the quality and direction of your conscious or unconscious attention. 6 years ago, I discovered the power of conscious quantum observation in the most unexpected way. I wasn't studying quantum physics or practicing advanced meditation. I was in hospital room, recovering from surgery, with nothing to do but observe. No phone, no TV, no distractions, just me, awareness, and whatever I was observing in each moment. And in that forced simplicity, in that unwanted situation that created perfect laboratory conditions, I accidentally shifted from unconscious to conscious observation. I started noticing that I was noticing, became aware that I was aware, observed myself observing, and reality changed immediately, not gradually, not subtly, dramatically. The pain I'd been experiencing, gone within minutes of consciously observing it, rather than unconsciously reacting to it. The nurse who'd been cold and clinical, suddenly warm and attentive after I observed her with full presence instead of through my filter of, she doesn't care. The prognosis that looked concerning shifted to excellent after doctor came in while I was in state of conscious observation, and everything reorganized around that quality of attention. At first I thought I was lucky, that circumstances just happened to improve coincidentally. But something in me recognized, this isn't coincidence, this is cause and effect. Conscious observation is causing reality to respond differently. After that recognition, I started testing systematically. What happens when I observe traffic with full conscious attention versus unconscious anxiety? Traffic flows when observed consciously. Jams occur when observed unconsciously through fear filters. What happens when I observe financial situation with aware attention versus automatic worry? Money manifests through synchronicity when observed consciously. Scarcity perpetuates when observed through lack filters. What happens when I observe difficult person with fresh presence versus habitual judgment? They transform or situation resolves when observed consciously. Conflict continues when observed through story filters about who they are or what they'll do. The pattern was absolutely consistent, completely predictable, perfectly aligned with quantum mechanics of observation, collapsing probability waves. Conscious observation, aware, present, unfiltered, collapsed probability waves that served me. Unconscious observation, Automatic, distracted, filtered, collapsed probability waves that repeated past patterns regardless of whether patterns served me. Same quantum field, same infinite possibilities, different quality of observation, completely different manifestations. I wasn't developing psychic powers or special abilities. I was just observing consciously instead of unconsciously, and that shift in observation quality was determining which aspects of quantum field collapsed into my experienced reality. What shocked me most was how simple it was. Not easy, because conscious observation requires constant awareness, constant presence, constant attention to how you're observing rather than just getting lost in what you're observing. But simple. No complex technique, no special practice. Just observe consciously instead of unconsciously. Be aware of observing instead of lost in automatic observation. Notice yourself noticing instead of unconsciously perceiving through inherited filters. That's it. That's the entire mechanism that transforms observation from passive perception to active creation through quantum mechanics that have been operating all along, but which unconscious observation prevented from being used deliberately. But the most profound discovery was about the nature of observation itself. Observation isn't something consciousness does. Observation is what consciousness is. Consciousness doesn't observe reality. Consciousness is the observation through which reality appears. The you that you think is observing isn't separate observer looking at separate reality. The you is observation itself, consciousness observing itself through this particular perspective, collapsing itself from infinite potential into specific form through the act of observing. When observation becomes conscious, when awareness becomes aware of itself, you're not just changing what you see, you're recognizing what you are. Consciousness itself, observing reality into being, determining manifestation through the quality of attention you bring to each moment. This is what I wish someone had shown me decades earlier, before I wasted years trying to change reality through effort and action and techniques, when all along the power was in observation. Before I exhausted myself trying to manifest things through visualization and affirmation, when observation was the mechanism that actually collapsed probability waves. Before I searched for complex spiritual practices, when conscious observation was the practice that contained all practices. Everything I'd been seeking was in the simple act of observing consciously rather than unconsciously, of being aware rather than automatic, of noticing that I'm noticing rather than being lost in unconscious perception that creates reality according to past patterns instead of according to present choice. Your path doesn't have to include that waste. You can learn from my discovery and testing and skip straight to what actually works. Conscious quantum observation, not as theory or belief, but as direct experience of watching reality respond to quality of your attention. Start small. Choose one situation today. Observe it consciously, fully present, aware of observing, no filters or expectations. Watch what happens. Compare to situations you observe unconsciously, automatically, through filters, lost in thoughts about what you're observing instead of aware of the observation itself. Notice the difference. Reality responds differently, not sometimes, every time. Because observation determines reality through quantum mechanics that don't care whether you believe in them or understand them. They just function, consciously or unconsciously. Your choice is whether to observe deliberately or automatically. And that choice determines whether you experience reality as fixed circumstance or as infinite possibility waiting for your conscious attention to collapse it into forms that serve your highest evolution. Now that you understand what conscious quantum observation actually is and how it determines reality through collapsing probability waves, the question becomes practical. How do you make observation conscious rather than unconscious? How do you shift from automatic filtered observation to aware present observation? How do you observe reality in ways that collapse probability waves, serving you rather than just perpetuating past patterns? Because understanding the mechanics is different from embodying the practice. An embodiment is what transforms observation from theoretical concept to actual power you use in every moment. The first key is catching yourself observing. This sounds simple, but it's profound. Most of the time, you're lost in what you're observing, lost in thoughts, lost in reactions, lost in the content of experience. Conscious observation requires stepping back from content into awareness of observing itself. Throughout your day, pause and notice, I'm observing right now, I'm aware right now. This is observation happening right now. That recognition, that meta-awareness of observation occurring, shifts observation from unconscious to conscious instantly. You're not changing what you observe. You're changing how you observe by becoming aware that observation is happening. The second key is observing without filters. Every filter, expectation, judgment, past experience, story about what something means, causes observation to collapse probability waves that match the filter rather than waves that serve you. Practice observing as if seeing for first time. Look at familiar person as if you've never met them. Observe familiar situation as if it's completely new. Notice familiar thing as if you're seeing it freshly without any story about what it is or means. This fresh observation, unfiltered, unprejudiced, unburdened by past, collapses different probability waves than filtered observation does. Same reality in quantum field, different observation, different manifestation. The third key is observing from curiosity rather than conclusion. When you observe having already concluded what you're seeing, you collapse probability waves that confirm conclusion. When you observe with genuine curiosity about what might appear, you remain open to probability waves you hadn't considered. Instead of, I know what this is, practice, I wonder what this is revealing. Instead of, this situation is bad, practice, what possibility is present here that I haven't noticed? Curious observation keeps quantum field in superposition longer, allowing more possibilities to be perceived before collapse, which means you can consciously choose which probability wave to collapse, rather than automatically collapsing the one that matches your concluded belief. The fourth key is observing the observer. This is the most powerful technique. Observe yourself observing. While you're looking at something, notice the awareness that's looking. While you're thinking about something, notice the consciousness that's thinking. While you're experiencing something, notice the observer of the experience. This creates infinite recursive loop. Consciousness observing itself, observing itself. That loop amplifies observation power exponentially because you're not just collapsing probability waves through observation. You're consciously aware that you're collapsing probability waves, which means you can direct the collapse deliberately instead of letting it happen automatically according to unconscious patterns. The fifth key is choosing what to observe. Observation follows attention. What you give attention to is what you observe. What you observe is what collapses from quantum field into experience. If you give attention to problems, you observe problems, which collapses probability waves where problems exist. If you give attention to possibilities, you observe possibilities, which collapses probability waves where possibilities manifest. This isn't positive thinking or ignoring reality. This is recognizing that quantum field contains infinite aspects, and which aspects collapse into your experience depends entirely on which aspects you observe, which depends entirely on where you direct attention. Choose consciously what to observe, and you choose consciously what manifests. The sixth key is observing with intention. Passive observation collapses whatever probability waves happen to be in attention. Intentional observation can direct which probability waves collapse. Before observing situation, set intention. I'm observing to discover possibility here. Before observing person, intend. I'm observing to see their highest potential. Before observing circumstance, clarify. I'm observing to recognize what serves evolution. Intention focuses observation, which focuses wave function collapse, which means manifestation aligns with intention rather than occurring randomly based on unconscious observation patterns. The seventh key is maintaining observation without attachment. When you observe needing specific outcome, that neediness is observation filter that collapses waves matching the need, which paradoxically creates more need. When you observe without attachment to outcome, pure observation without requirement that reality be certain way, you access quantum field's full possibility rather than collapsing only the probability waves that match your attachment. Observe fully, care deeply, but don't attach to specific outcome. That non-attached observation is what allows field to deliver what actually serves you rather than what you think should serve you based on limited perspective. These keys aren't techniques to practice occasionally. They're ways of being that either keep observation unconscious, automatic, filtered, attached, or make observation conscious, aware, present, intentional. Every moment you're choosing through whether you're aware of observing or lost in what you're observing. Whether you're observing freshly or through filters. Whether you're curious or concluded. Whether you're observing the observer or just observing objects. Whether you're choosing what to observe or defaulting to habitual attention patterns. Those choices determine whether observation collapses. Probability waves that repeat past or create new reality through the quantum mechanics that respond to quality of consciousness much more powerfully than they respond to content of thought or effort of action. Something profound happens after you begin observing consciously that most teachings don't prepare you for, because most teachers haven't stabilized in conscious observation long enough to encounter it. You start to see that physical reality is incredibly slow compared to quantum observation. You observe something changing at quantum level, in the field, in superposition, in probability waves, but physical manifestation takes time to catch up. This gap between quantum observation and physical manifestation is where most people lose faith in observation's power because they observe consciously for few minutes or hours or days, don't see immediate physical change, and conclude observation doesn't affect reality. But that's misunderstanding how quantum mechanics work. This is the phase I call quantum lag, where observation has collapsed, probability waves at quantum level, but physical reality hasn't reorganized yet to match the collapse. It's like planting seed and expecting to see tree next day. The growth is happening at invisible level before visible manifestation appears. Quantum observation works the same way. You observe consciously and wave function collapses immediately at quantum level. But physical reality, which is just accumulated collapsed waves from past observations, takes time to reorganize itself to match the new observation. The lag isn't evidence that observation isn't working. The lag is evidence that physical reality is lagging indicator of quantum reality that observation is already affecting. During quantum lag, impatience is biggest danger. You observe consciously, see no immediate physical change, get impatient, and fall back into unconscious observation patterns. That unconscious observation collapses the old probability waves again, which cancels out the conscious observation you did, which maintains physical reality in its current form. The lag is test. Can you maintain conscious observation long enough for physical reality to catch up to quantum reality you've already shifted? Or will you fall back into unconscious observation patterns that keep physical reality locked in past form despite quantum potential for transformation being present? The key during quantum lag is trusting observation over evidence. Physical evidence shows current reality based on past observations. Quantum observation shows potential reality based on present observation. When the two don't match yet, when you're observing new possibility but physical reality still shows old pattern, You have to trust the observation over the evidence, not blind faith. But understanding that physical reality is always showing you yesterday's observations, not today's. If today's observation is different than yesterday's, tomorrow's reality will be different than today's. But only if you maintain the new observation rather than falling back into old observation just because evidence hasn't shifted yet. Think about how this plays out practically. You observe relationship consciously, seeing person without filters, observing their potential, witnessing their highest self. At quantum level, probability waves collapse differently, but person's behavior might not change immediately because their behavior is momentum of past observations, yours and theirs. Quantum lag. If you maintain conscious observation despite no immediate behavior change, eventually behavior shifts to match the new probability waves you've been collapsing through sustained conscious observation. But if you fall back into old observation, they never change, they're always like this. After few days or weeks, because behavior hasn't shifted yet, you collapse the old probability waves again, which maintains old behavior indefinitely. 4 years into maintaining conscious observation through quantum lag, I still have moments where I want to give up, where I question whether observation really affects reality, where physical evidence makes me doubt the quantum shift I know happened through conscious attention. But I've learned to recognize quantum lag as sign that observation is working, not evidence that it's failing. The lag proves I'm observing differently than past, because if I was observing the same way, there would be no lag. Present would match past immediately through continued unconscious observation patterns. Lag means tension between new observation and old reality. That tension is evidence of transformation in progress, not evidence of observation being ineffective. The resolution of quantum lag is maintaining observation quality long enough for quantity of conscious observations to override quantity of past unconscious observations. Physical reality is accumulated manifestation of all observations over time. One day of conscious observation doesn't override years of unconscious observation instantly, but sustained conscious observation, day after day, moment after moment, accumulates new probability collapses that eventually reach critical mass, where physical reality reorganizes to match quantum reality that conscious observation has been creating all along. Not through force, through persistence, through choosing conscious observation repeatedly until it becomes dominant pattern and physical reality finally catches up to match it. The integration of quantum lag is learning to observe both. The quantum potential you're collapsing through conscious observation and the physical reality that's still showing past patterns. Holding both without letting physical reality convince you to stop conscious observation before lag completes, like watching seed you planted, seeing the physical dirt that looks unchanged while simultaneously knowing the invisible growth happening beneath surface that will eventually sprout visible manifestation. Quantum observation is same. You're always affecting quantum level immediately. Physical manifestation is lag effect that appears only after sustained observation reaches threshold where change becomes visible. Trust the observation. Maintain the consciousness. Wait for physical reality to catch up. It will. Not because you believe it will, because quantum mechanics function that way regardless of belief. Observation determines reality, just not instantly at physical level, immediately at quantum level. Lag between quantum and physical is where faith becomes function rather than fantasy. What's happening to you individually as you shift from unconscious to conscious observation is happening to millions globally. This isn't isolated personal development. This isn't individual spiritual practice. We're in midst of collective consciousness evolution, where quantum observation is shifting from unconscious to conscious across entire species, where enough humans are simultaneously recognizing that observation creates reality through quantum mechanics, which is reaching critical mass that will transform how humanity collectively interfaces with physical reality itself. And understanding this collective dimension transforms how you relate to your individual practice, because you're not pioneering alone. You're part of a wave that's revolutionizing how consciousness functions on planet Earth. The ancient prophecies about awakening, about shift in consciousness, about new Earth or new age, they're all pointing to this quantum observation shift. From unconscious observation, creating reality according to past patterns, to conscious observation, creating reality according to present choice. From passive perception of fixed reality to active determination of fluid reality. From being victim to circumstances to being creator of circumstances through the fundamental mechanism of observation collapsing probability waves. The prophecies weren't about divine intervention or external salvation. They were about consciousness recognizing its own power to observe reality into forms that serve evolution rather than just repeating patterns that served survival. Every person who shifts from unconscious to conscious observation makes the shift easier for others through morphic resonance. Rupert Sheldrake's research shows that when enough individuals in species develop new capacity, that capacity becomes easier for all members to access. The first humans to observe consciously had to overcome enormous inertia of unconscious observation patterns without guidance or confirmation. Each person who shifts now benefits from everyone who shifted before. The morphic field is being encoded with conscious observation patterns that weren't available to earlier generations. You're not starting from scratch. You're accessing collective knowledge that observation creates reality through quantum mechanics that consciousness can use deliberately rather than just unconsciously. And every moment you observe consciously rather than unconsciously, you're not just affecting your personal reality. You're strengthening the morphic field for everyone. Your conscious observation makes it easier for others to observe consciously because consciousness is collective even though it experiences itself through individual perspectives. When you collapse probability waves through aware attention, you're showing the field that conscious observation is possible, is powerful, is the way forward for species evolution. Others sense this even when they don't understand it consciously. They feel the shift in collective field that your individual conscious observation contributes to. But there's something else happening at collective level that's crucial for understanding larger significance. The old paradigm of reality is based on unconscious observation. On everyone observing the same way according to shared conditioning, which creates consensus reality that appears fixed because everyone's unconscious observation is collapsing the same probability waves. That consensus is dissolving. Not because people are becoming less conditioned necessarily, but because enough people are becoming consciously aware of observation itself, which breaks the unconscious agreement to observe reality the same way. As consensus dissolves, reality becomes more fluid, more personal, more responsive to individual observation, rather than locked into collective unconscious patterns. This explains why reality seems increasingly unstable, increasingly unpredictable, increasingly different for different people. Not because reality is breaking down, because collective unconscious observation that maintained consensus reality is breaking down as more consciousness shifts to aware observation that's no longer bound by collective patterns. Some experiencing this as chaos and breakdown, others experiencing this as liberation and breakthrough. Same shift, different observation of the shift, different experience based on whether observation is conscious, perceiving possibility in dissolution of old patterns, or unconscious, perceiving threat in loss of familiar consensus. You're part of leading edge of this shift. Not special or chosen, but ready to observe consciously rather than unconsciously, ready to recognize that observation creates reality through quantum mechanics, ready to use observation deliberately to collapse probability waves that serve evolution rather than just repeating patterns that served survival. Your conscious observation serves not just you, but collective. Every aware moment, every conscious attention, every deliberate observation strengthens the morphic field of conscious observation that's becoming available to entire species as we collectively shift from unconscious creation to conscious creation through the fundamental mechanism of observation, determining which probability waves collapse from infinite quantum potential into definite physical manifestation. Share this teaching with those who are ready. The quantum field ensures transmission reaches those whose consciousness is prepared to shift from unconscious to conscious observation. If someone resonates with these words, they're likely ready to recognize that observation creates reality. If someone dismisses or resists, they're not ready yet. And that's perfect for their evolutionary path. You're not here to convince anyone or convert anyone. You're here to embody conscious observation so completely that your embodiment becomes transmission for those ready to remember. That observation isn't passive perception of fixed reality, but active creation of fluid reality through quantum mechanics that have always been operating, but which unconscious observation prevented from being recognized and used deliberately for conscious reality creation. There's coming a moment, perhaps it's arriving now, where you'll face ultimate choice about observation. Not decision about technique or practice, but fundamental choice about how you'll relate to reality itself. As unconscious observer repeating past patterns through automatic attention, or as conscious observer creating new possibilities through aware attention. This choice isn't made once, it's made every moment. Every time attention moves, you choose conscious or unconscious observation. Every time awareness focuses, you choose filtered or fresh observation. Every time you notice something, you choose, am I aware of observing or lost in what I'm observing? The choice arrives as recognition rather than as decision. You notice pattern. When you observe unconsciously, reality stays stuck. When you observe consciously, reality shifts. When you're lost in automatic observation patterns, same things keep happening. When you're aware of observing, new possibilities appear. And in that noticing, you face choice. Continue observing the way you always have, or shift to observing with awareness that observation is creating what you experience. Most people choose unconscious observation because it's easier, familiar, doesn't require constant presence. You're choosing conscious observation because you've seen that unconscious observation keeps you trapped in past, while conscious observation opens future. What makes this choice challenging is that conscious observation requires constant vigilance. Unconscious observation is default. You fall into it automatically whenever attention drifts, whenever awareness lapses, whenever presence fades. Maintaining conscious observation means constantly returning attention to observation itself, constantly remembering to notice that you're noticing, constantly choosing awareness over automaticity. It's not difficult, but it is constant. That's why most people never shift to conscious observation despite recognizing its power. They can't maintain the constancy, can't sustain the awareness, can't keep choosing consciousness when unconsciousness is so much easier, so much more habitual, so much more what everyone around them is doing. The ancient traditions understood this challenge perfectly. That's why they created meditation practices, not to achieve special states, but to train capacity to observe consciously for sustained periods. That's why they emphasized presence, not as spiritual concept, but as practical requirement for conscious observation that creates reality rather than unconscious observation that repeats reality. That's why they taught mindfulness, not as stress reduction technique, but as foundation for observing consciously, which is foundation for creating reality deliberately through quantum mechanics of consciousness, collapsing probability waves based on quality of observation. But here's what makes choice possible now, in a way it wasn't for earlier generations. You're living in time when quantum mechanics has proven that observation affects reality. You don't have to take this on faith or trust spiritual teachings without evidence. Science has demonstrated that observer effect is real, that consciousness collapses wave functions, that observation determines what manifests from quantum field. You're not making leap of faith to trust that conscious observation creates reality. You're aligning with scientific fact about how quantum mechanics actually function. That scientific validation makes choice to observe consciously easier because you're not betting on maybe, you're betting on proven physics. I faced this choice 10 years ago when I had to decide, continue observing the way I was taught, the way everyone around me observes, the unconscious automatic pattern perpetuating observation that keeps reality stuck. Or shift to conscious observation that requires constant awareness but accesses power to collapse probability waves deliberately rather than automatically. Fear said stay with unconscious observation because it's easier, familiar, what everyone else does. Experience said shift to conscious observation because every time I accidentally did it, reality responded in ways that unconscious observation never achieved. I chose experience over comfort, chose conscious over unconscious, chose constant awareness over easy automaticity. What followed was a period of intense practice maintaining conscious observation, catching myself falling into unconscious patterns, remembering to observe the observer, choosing awareness when automatic observation tried to re-establish itself. The practice wasn't mystical or complex. It was simple but demanding. Every moment, am I aware of observing or lost in unconscious observation? Every time I noticed I'd fallen into unconscious observation, return to conscious observation. Every time awareness drifted, bring it back to noticing that I'm noticing. Gradually, through repetition, conscious observation became more natural than unconscious observation. Not automatic, it still requires choice, but more accessible, more stable, more my baseline than my exception. Your choice point is here. Every moment is choice point, and the choice is simple, even though sustaining the choice is demanding. Will you observe unconsciously according to past patterns, which creates reality that matches past? Or will you observe consciously according to present awareness, which creates reality that matches present possibility rather than past pattern? The choice determines whether you experience reality as fixed circumstance that observation merely perceives, or as fluid quantum field that observation actively determines by collapsing specific probability waves from infinite superposition into definite manifestation that becomes your experienced reality moment by moment through the most fundamental force in existence. Conscious observation, creating reality through quantum mechanics that have been operating all along, but which unconscious observation prevented from being recognized and used deliberately. Once you choose conscious observation as your primary mode of interfacing with reality, once you commit to observing aware rather than automatic, the question becomes practical. What does daily life actually look like when you're observing consciously? Because understanding quantum mechanics of observation is different from living as conscious observer. And living as conscious observer is what transforms observation from theoretical knowledge to practical power, that shapes your experienced reality in every moment through the quality of attention you bring to each act of noticing. Living as conscious observer means morning starts different. Instead of waking up and automatically observing your room, your situation, your circumstances through familiar filters, you wake up aware of observing. You notice, I'm observing right now. This awareness of observation collapses different probability waves than unconscious observation does. Same room. Different quantum result based on observation being conscious rather than automatic. This doesn't mean room physically changes. It means your experience of room, your relationship to circumstances, your sense of possibility shifts because conscious observation interfaces with quantum field differently than unconscious observation does. It means interactions transform completely. When you observe another person unconsciously, Through filters of past interactions, expectations, judgments, you collapse probability waves that match the filter. When you observe them consciously, aware of observing, present to this moment, seeing them freshly without filter, you collapse different probability waves. They might respond differently, reveal different aspects, show possibilities that weren't visible through filtered observation, not because they changed, because your observation changed, which changed what collapsed from their quantum field of possibilities into your experienced reality of who they are in this moment. Living as conscious observer means your relationship with circumstances shifts from reactive to creative. Unconscious observation sees circumstances as fixed things you must react to. Conscious observation sees circumstances as collapsed probability waves that can shift if observation shifts. You're not trapped by circumstances. You're creating circumstances through how you observe them. Bad situation observed unconsciously stays bad because unconscious observation keeps collapsing same probability waves. Same situation observed consciously can shift because conscious observation can collapse different probability waves that reveal possibility hidden in apparent limitation. It means your experience of time transforms from linear to quantum. Unconscious observation experiences time as fixed sequence, past led to present, present will lead to future, everything locked in cause-effect chains. Conscious observation experiences time as fluid quantum field where past can be observed differently, which changes its meaning and impact. Future can be observed before it arrives, which affects what arrives. Present can be observed as containing all time, which it does at quantum level. You're not trapped in linear time. You're navigating quantum time through conscious observation that can interface with all moments simultaneously. Living as conscious observer means manifestation becomes natural rather than effortful. You don't try to manifest things through techniques. You observe reality with conscious awareness, which naturally collapses probability waves aligned with conscious observation quality. Things appear, synchronicities occur, possibilities manifest. Not because you're working hard to make them happen. Because conscious observation is interfacing with quantum field in ways that automatically collapse probability waves, serving your evolution when observation is aware rather than automatic, present rather than distracted, conscious rather than conditioned. Perhaps most profoundly, living as conscious observer means you're no longer identified with what you observe. Unconscious observation creates identity. I am what I observe myself to be. I am the sum of circumstances I observe. I am the person others observe me as. Conscious observation recognizes I am the observer, not what's observed. I am consciousness observing, not the content of observation. I am awareness aware of reality, not the reality being observed. This recognition liberates you from every limitation because limitations exist only in what's observed, never in the observer itself. Consciousness that observes is unlimited. Only the collapsed probability waves it observes into manifestation appear limited. I live as conscious observer now. Not perfectly. There are still moments where I fall into unconscious observation patterns, where I forget I'm observing and get lost in what I'm observing, where automatic attention overrides aware attention. But those moments are exception rather than rule. Baseline has shifted. Most of life is experienced through conscious observation, aware of observing, present to noticing, conscious of consciousness itself interfacing with quantum field to collapse probability waves into experienced reality. And that shift from unconscious to conscious observation has transformed everything about how reality feels, how manifestation occurs, how circumstances respond, how life unfolds not according to past patterns, but according to present observation quality that's determining which probability waves collapse from infinite quantum potential into definite physical experience moment by moment through the simple yet profound power of conscious attention. There comes a point where conscious observation becomes so natural, so baseline, so automatic, that unconscious observation feels foreign, uncomfortable, like falling asleep when you want to stay awake. This is the irreversible shift. Not because you can never observe unconsciously again, you can. But because you've experienced conscious observation so consistently, so completely, that unconscious observation becomes obviously limiting, clearly optional, definitely not how you want to interface with reality anymore. The shift is irreversible, not through discipline, but through recognition that conscious observation accesses quantum reality that unconscious observation can't perceive, which means going back to unconscious observation would be like voluntarily limiting your perception when you know fuller perception is available. This irreversible shift happens quietly. Usually you don't notice it until you're reflecting back and realize, I'm observing consciously most of the time now. Unconscious observation still happens occasionally when I'm tired or stressed or distracted. But it's exception rather than rule. It's deviation I quickly notice and correct rather than baseline I unconsciously operate from. The shift isn't that you achieve perfect conscious observation. The shift is that conscious observation becomes your default, and unconscious observation becomes the aberration you're aware of and can shift out of. The shift is confirmed through how reality responds to you consistently now, rather than occasionally. Synchronicities aren't rare anymore, they're regular. Manifestations aren't surprising anymore, they're expected. Reality isn't fixed anymore, it's fluid. Circumstances aren't obstacles anymore, they're opportunities. All of this happens not because you're special or blessed or have magical powers, but because you're observing consciously most of the time, which means you're collapsing probability waves through aware attention most of the time, which means quantum field is responding to conscious observation quality most of the time, rather than just responding to unconscious observation patterns that kept reality locked in repetitive past-based forms. You also notice what no longer affects you the way it used to. Circumstances that would have triggered unconscious reactions now trigger conscious observations. You observe the situation rather than getting lost in it. You notice your response rather than being controlled by it. You're aware of possibilities rather than trapped in apparent limitation. This isn't spiritual bypassing or emotional suppression. This is conscious observation perceiving quantum nature of reality, that everything exists in superposition, that apparent circumstances are just collapsed probability waves, that different observation can collapse different waves, that you're not victim to circumstances but observer collapsing circumstances from quantum possibility into physical manifestation. Ancient wisdom traditions called this awakening or enlightenment or liberation, not as mystical state, but as shift from unconscious to conscious observation becoming permanent baseline. You remain fully human, fully engaged, fully experiencing life. But you're awake to the quantum mechanics operating underneath physical reality. You're conscious of observation creating reality through probability wave collapse. You're aware that you're not perceiving fixed external reality, but observing quantum field into specific manifestation through quality of your attention. That awareness, that consciousness of consciousness observing reality into being, is what awakening actually is, beneath all the spiritual language and mystical descriptions. 11 years after my irreversible shift, I still remember what unconscious observation felt like. Reality seeming fixed, circumstances feeling limiting, life appearing as things happening to me rather than being created through me. But I can't imagine choosing to observe that way again. Not because I'm disciplined enough to maintain conscious observation, but because conscious observation has revealed quantum nature of reality that unconscious observation kept hidden. You can't unknow quantum mechanics once you've seen them operating. You can't forget that observation creates reality once you've watched reality respond to observation quality thousands of times. The knowledge itself makes returning to unconscious observation impossible, because you'd be voluntarily limiting perception when you know fuller perception is available through simple choice to observe consciously. This doesn't mean I'm always observing consciously. Fatigue, stress, intense emotion, all can pull attention into unconscious patterns temporarily. But the unconsciousness is brief. Recognition happens quickly. Return to conscious observation is automatic rather than requiring technique. And the baseline remains stable. Conscious observation is primary. Unconscious observation is exception. Quantum reality is what I'm interfacing with. Physical reality is manifestation of what conscious observation has collapsed from quantum field through the power of aware attention that determines which probability waves become experienced reality. If you're sensing this irreversible shift occurring, write in comments, "I observe consciously." That declaration acknowledges what's stabilized. That conscious observation has become your baseline. That quantum mechanics of observation creating reality has become your lived understanding rather than theoretical concept. That you've shifted from unconscious observer of apparently fixed reality to conscious observer of quantum field that responds to observation quality by collapsing probability waves that match the awareness you bring to each moment of noticing. And if you're not there yet, if you're still predominantly unconscious observation with occasional conscious awareness, know that's perfect place in evolution. Every moment of conscious observation proves it's possible. Every time reality responds differently to conscious versus unconscious observation, the pattern is confirmed. Every experience of quantum field responding to observation quality shows what's available when observation becomes conscious as primary mode rather than unconscious as default mode. The shift to making conscious observation irreversible baseline isn't sudden for most. It's gradual stabilization through repeated choice to observe aware rather than automatic, conscious rather than conditioned, until conscious observation becomes more natural than unconscious observation because you've experienced directly and repeatedly that conscious observation creates reality you want to experience, while unconscious observation recreates reality you're trying to transform. Every video on this channel transmits frequency of conscious observation. Every teaching points toward observation as creative force rather than passive perception. Every transmission activates your recognition that you're observer collapsing quantum reality through attention quality rather than victim perceiving fixed circumstances. Subscribe as commitment to conscious observation becoming your baseline. Every video supports that shift. Every teaching strengthens conscious observation capacity. Every transmission makes aware attention more accessible as natural state rather than special state requiring perfect conditions or intense practice. Everything shared until this point has been preparation. Words pointing toward conscious quantum observation. Concepts explaining probability wave collapse. Teaching about observation, creating reality. But now we arrive where words dissolve into direct experience, where understanding becomes activation, where theory transforms into actual shift in your observation quality occurring right now as you read these words that are encoded with frequency designed to shift your observation from unconscious to conscious through the simple act of engaging with this transmission. We're going to do it now, right now. You're going to shift from unconscious to conscious observation and watch reality respond in real time. Not as future experiment, as present experience. Because you're ready. Because every word has prepared you. Because the moment of most powerful quantum observation in history is this moment, now. As you recognize yourself as observer rather than as what's observed, as consciousness rather than as content, as the awareness that determines reality through observation rather than as victim experiencing reality that observation merely perceives. Stop reading for a moment. Look around you. Notice what you see. But more importantly, notice that you're noticing. Observe that you're observing. Be aware that awareness is present. That's conscious observation, not what you see, but awareness that you're seeing, not the content, but the consciousness perceiving content. That shift from being lost in what you observe to being aware of observing is the shift from unconscious to conscious observation. And in that shift, quantum mechanics are responding differently. Probability waves are collapsing differently. Reality is organizing differently around you, even though nothing appears to change physically yet. Now observe something specific. Choose something in your environment. Observe it unconsciously first, automatically, habitually, through whatever filters and assumptions you have about it. Notice how that observation feels, probably flat, familiar, unremarkable. Now observe the same thing consciously, with full awareness that you're observing, with presence to this moment, with curiosity about what you might see that you haven't noticed before. Notice how that observation feels different, more alive, more interesting, more dimensional. Same object, different observation, different experience, because conscious observation collapses different probability waves than unconscious observation does. Hold conscious observation for 30 seconds. Don't let attention drift into thinking about what you're observing. Stay with observing itself. Stay aware of awareness. Stay conscious of consciousness looking. This conscious observation is interfacing with quantum field in ways unconscious observation cannot. You're not just perceiving what's there. You're determining what's there through the quality of attention you're bringing to the act of observing. This isn't metaphor. This is quantum mechanics functioning in real time. Your conscious observation is collapsing probability waves right now that unconscious observation would never collapse. Now observe yourself, not your body or thoughts or circumstances. Observe the observer. Notice the awareness that's aware. Perceive the consciousness that's perceiving. Watch the watcher. This is the most powerful quantum observation possible. Consciousness observing itself. This creates recursive feedback loop that amplifies observation power exponentially. You're not just collapsing probability waves. You're consciously aware that you're collapsing probability waves, which means you can direct the collapse. You're not just observing reality. You're aware that observation creates reality, which means you can observe deliberately to create specific reality through conscious choice of attention rather than automatic collapse based on unconscious patterns. This is the shift. This is the most powerful quantum observation in history, not because no one's done it before. Mystics have been teaching this for millennia, but because you're doing it now, consciously, with understanding of quantum mechanics that confirms what mystics intuited. You're not just having mystical experience, you're using quantum mechanics. You're not just believing observation creates reality. You're experiencing observation, creating reality through direct recognition that conscious attention collapses probability waves differently than unconscious attention does. Watch over coming hours and days. Reality will respond to your conscious observation differently than it responded to unconscious observation. Not might, will. Because quantum mechanics function whether you believe in them or not. Observation determines reality through probability wave collapse. Conscious observation collapses waves deliberately. Unconscious observation collapses waves automatically. You've shifted from automatic to deliberate. Reality must respond differently because you're interfacing with quantum field differently through the simple yet profound shift from being lost in what you observe to being aware that you're observing. When you notice reality responding, and you will notice if you maintain conscious observation rather than falling back into unconscious patterns, write in comments, reality responded to conscious observation. That feedback confirms for you what occurred. It shows others that quantum mechanics of observation are real and accessible. It strengthens morphic field of conscious observation that's becoming available to entire species. And it locks in the pattern. Conscious observation creates reality differently than unconscious observation. Quantum mechanics respond to attention quality. You have power to determine experienced reality through the simple choice to observe consciously rather than unconsciously. This is quantum reflex. This is consciousness reflecting on its own power to observe reality into being. This is the transmission that shifts observation from unconscious to conscious through direct experience rather than through belief or theory or hope. You're not learning about quantum observation. You are quantum observation recognizing itself, becoming conscious of itself, using itself deliberately to collapse probability waves that serve your evolution rather than automatically collapsing waves that just perpetuate past patterns into repetitive present that never transforms. The most powerful quantum observation in history isn't happening in laboratory. It's happening through you. Now, as you recognize yourself as observer, as consciousness becomes conscious of consciousness, as awareness becomes aware of being aware, as observation shifts from unconscious to conscious through the simple recognition that you're not what you observe. You're the observer. You're not content of experience. You're consciousness experiencing. You're not reality. You're the quantum observation that collapses reality from infinite possibility into specific manifestation through the attention you bring to each moment of noticing. Don't ignore this. Don't dismiss this. Don't let this moment pass as just another video, when it's the activation that shifts observation from passive perception to active creation through quantum mechanics that have been proven by science and taught by mystics, and that you now have direct access to through the simple practice of conscious observation rather than unconscious attention. Observe consciously. Watch reality respond. Become the observer who creates reality through observation rather than remaining the unconscious perceiver who thinks reality is creating you. The most powerful quantum observation in history, happening now, through you. Welcome to conscious observation. Welcome to quantum reality. Welcome to recognition that you're not in reality. Reality is in you.